Radio 102.9 KARN at 742. Kevin Miller in for Bob Steele. He'll be back next week with Tales of Ireland. He'll let us know all about that, I promise you. Working up to 93 for this afternoon. Showers possible here and there. A pop-up situation this afternoon. At 71 in Little Rock. On with us, it's Tim Griffin, 2nd District U.S. Congressman. Good morning, Mr. Griffin. How are you, sir?
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, now it's all going to work. It all
no problem.
Comes together like a great plan, doesn't it? And apparently Exxon did not have a good plan when they reopened that pipeline in Mayflower. What is going on there?
Well, the issue is in 2006, and we're, as we go along with our investigation, we just learn more and more, and we're trying to raise questions as they come up. And in 2006, when they reopened the Pegasus pipeline, restarted it, it had been dormant for about 4 years. And you would think that if you're going to restart a pipeline that had been dormant, that you would want to go through the full range of tests, particularly when it goes through a sensitive area like the Maumelle watershed that provides water to, about 425,000 Central Arkansans.
You bring up a very valid point there, Congressman, that not only was Mayflower affected, but doesn't that pipeline cross a part of Lake Maumelle itself, or am I mistaken?
It's through the watershed, not the lake itself, not the water itself, but it was moved, and won't go back into history, but the pipeline was moved decades ago. It just, in my view, wasn't moved far enough. But it's 13.7 miles is about what goes through the watershed. And my question to Exxon is, when you restarted this deal, why did you just do the minimal tests required? Now, somebody might say, well, that's all the regulations require. Well, but Exxon has told me and others that in some instances they will do more than is required by the federal regulations because they want to make sure this or that is safe. And my question to them is, if there was ever a time to go the extra mile, this was it. Why didn't you do it? And if you look at the tests available to Exxon when you're looking at a pipeline, there are a whole host of tests that they can do. Yet they only did one, what we call a hydrostatic test. That's where they push water at under pressure through an otherwise empty pipeline to see if they can detect cracks and leaks and what have you. And even that one was not at the pressure level that it could have been that may have detected some of these cracks. So bottom line is they could have done a lot more. And I just want to know internally, what process do they have for identifying sensitive areas like the Maumelle watershed? What process do they go through to determine, okay, we're only going to do one of our 5 tests on this, or 2 of our 5, or all of our 5, or whatever? Because I just think if you're restarting a pipeline that's been dormant for 4 years and it's in a really sensitive place, you ought to pull out the whole book of tests and make darn sure that sucker's not going to leak.
We're on with Congressman Tim Griffin, and let me ask you, too, there have been some questions about the pipeline design. Can you speak for how long this pipeline was buried in the 1940s? What is the lifespan for one of these things? Do they last hundreds of years or what?
Well, I don't know if it would be hundreds of years. It depends on the particular pipe, and supposedly the tests are supposed to gauge that. Now, this one I've said ought to be moved and ought to be replaced, particularly as it relates to the 13.7 miles that goes through the watershed. But my point is, there are a number of tests they could have done that would have told you whether this one was too weak or whatever. But if I could pivot real quickly, since you're giving me some airtime on this,
sure. There's
a couple things I want to complain about with regard to Exxon. I really hadn't talked much about it. I've been waiting for an opportunity. Number one, well, first of all, the Maumelle watershed, where we go from here and all that is certainly critically important, and I'm dealing with that. But the other thing that I deal with on a day-to-day basis are the folks that are affected. And I deal with businesses that have been affected. I deal with individuals that have been affected, folks that had houses in the neighborhood, et cetera. And on the individual front, there's one guy in particular that he's a single father that I've been trying to help, been trying to deal with Exxon on it. And basically Exxon has said, look, we'll buy your house. You need to get back in that house. If you don't want to get back in your house and you don't agree to sell, then we're not going to give you any additional time paid for by us in an apartment or what have you. So basically, this individual has a choice. Sell to Exxon immediately, basically, or don't sell to Exxon now, sell down the road sometime, but they're going to cut off the rent. So what they do is they basically say, if you let us buy your house, we'll cover the rest of the lease that you've had to sign. But if you aren't ready to sell your house and you're not ready to move back in it, because he just didn't want to move back in it,
sure,
all right? And I understand some people are not going to want to ever do that, right? But if you decide not to sell now, we're not going to pay the rest of your lease. So the only way we will pay out the rest of your lease of the apartment you're in is if you sell the home to us or move back in it. So if somebody needs more time because they're not going to move back in that house, okay, and I understand that. If somebody needs more time, Exxon's not going to give them that time on their dime.
Yeah,
they'll say, sure, you could take some more time, but you're going to have to pay your own rent.
And you've got things to consider there, single-father school districts.
Yeah. Well, he's got this individual. I won't go into all the details, but this individual has let's just say that the spill didn't come at a good time in his life.
No,
okay?
I don't think it came at a good time in anybody's life.
Right,
yeah.
right. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Financially, he has some things going on, and that most other folks may not have. Right? Mm-hmm. Some people may have the financial wherewithal to handle some interruption, whatever. This person is basically in a vice. He's being pushed financially to move back in that house or sell it to Exxon, even though he doesn't want to at this point. Because if he doesn't, he's going to be paying a house payment, and he's going to be paying the rent on the apartment that he's in.
Sounds like
I think that they're putting the squeeze. The Exxon's putting the squeeze on them in that particular situation. And I've said, don't treat everybody as if they have the same circumstances. Some people have different circumstances. Some people have difficult things they're going through. So what I've said is, deal with people individually. Obviously, it didn't come at a good time for anybody. It's awful for everybody. But some people financially are in different situations than other people, right?
Absolutely.
This individual has, I think he's about the last resident left. But he's got a situation where he needs some special consideration. And we're only talking about peanuts. So that's one issue I'm real concerned about. The other thing I'm going to tell you about.
And Congressman, I
know you're running out of time.
I really am, yes.
Okay. There is a business in Mayflower that was cut off basically from everybody else because they had a police escort at the end of the road when this whole thing happened. Well, their sales dropped drastically. So they've got a big claim. They didn't ask for the spill. Exxon ought to pony up and pay the claim. And because, yeah, people could technically get down to their business, but who wants to go through a police checkpoint to shop, right? So it really hurt their business. That's the other one I'm dealing with. So I am dead set on getting these two things fixed, and I'm going to go public about it as much as I can, because this is not a heavy lift, and regardless, this is what Exxon ought to do.
U.S. Congressman Tim Griffin, thank you very much for your time this morning. We certainly appreciate that. I know you're on it, and it's a very frustrating situation there in Mayflower. 7:53.
Thank you.
It's News Radio KARN. Let's check traffic with Chris Counts.